really? Wow.
So she's not going to present the two written items?
Yeah.
James will present them?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Recording in
Jackie
progress.
just briefly mentioned that. Yeah? Okay. We're now calling the Planning Committee meeting to order. Could you please give your attention to this short video?
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, thank you. And Jackie, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
Here.
Commissioner Meadows?
Here.
Commissioner Perkins? Chair Kelly?
Here.
All commissioners present except for Commissioner Perkins.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak? Jackie, do we have anyone online?
No one online, and I've received no written public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on. So our next item is the consent calendar. Any comments? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve? Second.
Okay. Any public comment on the consent calendar? I don't see any.
No hands raised and no public comment received.
Oh, okay, thank you. So can we have a roll call vote, Jackie?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins? And Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Perkins absent.
Great. So now we move on to our regular agenda items, and the first one is for approval of Resolution 2140G for review and comment in support of the authority's commitment to the county-wide Vision Zero policy and recommendation to adopt it, which would be integrated into the Contra Costa County Transportation Safety Plan. And this will be presented by Colin Clark. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you, Chair Kelly. Good afternoon, all. I have Matt Broughton here with Kittleson, and over the past year or so, we've been working with Kittleson and Kimley Horn on this countywide comprehensive transportation safety action plan. We will include quite a bit of information, but feel free to stop me as we go to ask questions and provide comments. First, some background in terms of this document. So the draft resolution that is in front of you for consideration was first adopted in September of 2021, and then it was revised in September of 2022, which then added the strengthened commitment to achieve Vision Zero by 2034. In other words, eliminate fatal and severe injuries by 2034 with a 50% reduction by 2029. And so in 2021, the board adopted the Vision Zero Guide, which was the policy and implementation guide for local agencies. And then included in that is the Vision Zero toolbox, and other resources. And now this CCTSAP, the Transportation Safety Action Plan, is going to be proposed to be an addendum, to attach under the umbrella of the guide, if that makes sense, because it's meant to be the comprehensive safety action plan for compliance with SS4A, USDOT Safe Streets and Roads for All program to basically empower lead agencies empower local agencies to be their own lead applicant from an implementation grant perspective, so that they don't have to rely on CCTA as the project sponsor or the lead applicant. And so, from eligibility and compliance standpoint, and also addressing the safe systems approach. So another acronym to throw at us is the LRSP. So just about every single agency has an adopted local road safety plan, and so that was reviewed as part of this effort. But this CCTSAP is meant to consistently provide a countywide consistent approach to the safe systems approach, which I'll explain in more detail in the coming slides. Let's see if there's anything else on this slide to highlight. Yeah, national competitiveness in terms of outreach. Next slide, please. And the overall process. So there was a community engagement process countywide, which included an online website, interactive map, and allowing members of the public and local staff to add comments that are kind of geolocated and may or may not have shown up in the collision data analysis that and so it was just deepening the breadth of different data sources to help inform the plan. And so there's the website. There were leveraging the CTP, the Countywide Transportation Plan community event series in summer of 2023 with specific traffic safety poster and quick response code, QR code, and other materials to further get more input from the community. So went through that, and then a year ago went through the regional transportation planning advisory committees, both the technical advisory committees and the policy advisory committees at the beginning of the process to get input and provide some preliminary findings in terms of collision data, but also most recently have gone again to the RTPCs with the draft plan for review. And so as part of that process, we've received comments, and so we're still working to address those comments. There's been a lot of really helpful input, and so some of the input may or may not be, it's not going to meet the packet deadline for the board necessarily, but we are going to ask from a staff perspective that the approval and adoption action be done with the idea in mind that these comments are going to be addressed. And to give you some idea of some of the comments, it's in regards to collision data, because there's a lot of different time periods and data sets and data sources. And so we're working with local agencies on that in terms of the high injury network and which street segments or streets or corridors are identified as more likely to be subject to fatal and severe injuries, for example. But I'll get into kind of more of that later, but just want to make sure that that's clear off the top. And also in terms of background, this was an MTC-funded effort. It was essentially a pilot in some ways because the BAVIS tool, which is a collision data analysis tool that MTC developed in coordination with CCTA staff and WSP and MySidewalk back in 2021-ish, I think. So I think it went public in 2022 or 2023, and it's meant to be a tool for local agencies. And so this was an effort by MTC to empower CCTA and its local agencies to pilot this new tool and have kind of another tool in the toolbox to hopefully be more competitive nationally for grant applications. But the overall deliverable, the plan, is meant to be a living document, an iterative one, and what has come out of it has included the grant application, which I'll let John speak to later. But there's an SS4A grant application. There's a Safe Routes to Trails Bay Trail and Transit, two multi-jurisdiction grant applications that have also come out of this. So lots of really valuable work has come out of this planning effort over the past year. And as we move toward some of the other kind of parallel, if you will, planning efforts that are ongoing in terms of emergency evacuation readiness planning and that type of thing, there's an opportunity to address safety concerns and eliminating fatal and severe injuries while also allowing for emergency egress and access, and using quick build materials and temporary type methods that allow for flexibility. Next slide is showing the different community events that I mentioned and all the different interactions, both in person, remotely through different meetings, but also online through the website interactions. And then the next slide shows the Vision Zero policy that the CCTA board adopted initially in 2021. Some of the core tenets, the core principles of this approach and the safe system approach is shared responsibility across all modes, shared responsibility also in terms of the multidisciplinary effort you have including at the local level, but also with the countywide Vision Zero working group. It's a multidisciplinary effort. We have law enforcement, police, fire, emergency responders, public health professionals, public works, engineering, planning, school districts or educational background. There's a number of different, basically everyone, to the extent that it can be done, it's trying to get input from each of the different expertise areas. And so another kind of key principle is that this approach assumes that human error is inevitable. People make mistakes. People are human. People make mistakes. And so as a transportation industry, it's a big cultural shift, a behavior change. And over the last many years, we've been working closely with our local agency partners to help design, plan, design, construct, operate, and maintain the transportation system in a more safe systems friendly approach, so that fatal and severe injuries don't have to be the norm, as unfortunately the collision data and the analysis shows that it has been increasing in terms of fatal and severe injuries over time. Next slide. Another kind of key thing in terms of the safe system approach is addressing, for example, multiple different locations or corridors that even if they haven't yet had a fatal or severe injury, the idea is if they have similar characteristics, like it's an arterial, then using the safe systems approach, we would work with our partners to design and construct it in a way that addresses speed reduction, for example, to make events more medically manageable, and I'll show you what that means on the next slide. From NHTSA and Federal Highway Administration, it has been quantified in terms of the likelihood that a pedestrian would collision with a pedestrian and a vehicle would be fatal at these different speeds. And so one of the things you may have heard about recently is AB 413, the daylighting law that becomes enforceable January 1st in terms of daylighting I guess it's the last 20 feet of the intersection approach, right? For increased visibility, increased sight lines, and being able to apply that citywide, that is a safe systems approach, so that you can account for braking distance and reaction time. Next slide is just kind of a different way of communicating how the risk of injuries and the severity thereof increase with the different speeds. Next slide is just intended to give a bit of a visual in terms of complete streets and the safe system approach in terms of what are we talking about here. Happy to go into more detail later, but on the next slide is so as part of this effort, and I'll have Matt co-present with me and chime in here as well, that the local road safety planning collision data, which was a different data set, we've looked at that. We've looked at these other data sets like the Vision Zero guide that I mentioned in 2021. It looked at 10 years of analysis, 2008 through 2017. And now this new thing that's before you today, the CCTSAP, is a new decade of analysis, 2013 through 2022. So that's the kind of the distinction there. Did you want to add anything more on this slide, or?
No, I don't think so. I think just highlighting again that effort to bring everything together from each of the local agencies into one consistent document while recognizing regional priorities is one of the core goals of this outcome.
And so one of the kind of takeaways and deliverables is common countywide collision types, similar to the 10 years of analysis last time around. Unfortunately, there's some similarities, which in some ways allows for some reliability to help scope projects more intuitively, but the findings out of this most recent analysis included common countywide collision patterns like hit objects, which in some cases can just be a single vehicle without a pedestrian or cyclist even involved. And I'll have you speak to these slides.
Yeah, so the hit object would be somebody going off the road typically and hitting a pole or other fixed object like a tree, resulting, and these are, again, collision patterns that are just for fatal or severe injuries, so those are life-changing injuries that occur. And then you can also see the three other major collision patterns being pedestrian-involved crashes, so any crash that involves a pedestrian. Again, if we think about the physics principle of that speed of impact plus a vulnerable road user, that we unfortunately understand that outcome. Broadside collision would be a collision like at an intersection, like a T-bone intersection where one vehicle hits the side of another. And then rear-end collision, so when these are fatal or severe injury, they tend to be at higher speed facilities, so they might be on State Route 4 or something like that, where a slowdown and a high-speed impact results in a death or a serious injury. And just coming from that, pulling some of the emphasis areas out of that analysis, again, consistency with the prior Vision Zero guide, looking at each of the individual jurisdictions, what are the common emphasis areas that they have in their local road safety plans, intersections, pedestrian and bicycle involved collisions being key drivers for fatal and serious injuries in their jurisdictions, as well as a desire to address speed management or speeding and aggressive driving in the jurisdiction.
And this next slide, although complicated, you're going to be testing on it at the end of this, and let's make sure we're all paying attention. Totally kidding. One of the commonalities that you see across the different subregions on this with the most recent CCTSAP analysis is bikes and pedestrians being the more vulnerable road users that are disproportionately affected by fatal and severe injuries. So this is consistent with the findings analysis of the past, unfortunately, and also intersections ends up being quite a common countywide collision type, and so it can be a focal point for developing project ideas and locations for addressing the safe system approach, including using quick build.
And one thing I would just add on here is these are locally identified emphasis areas from their local road safety plans in this case, and so it does not mean that some of these other issues are not important for that jurisdiction. It just means that of the KSI, when they did their analysis, they identified certain priorities, and so we're trying to bring that together and then make sure that that's aligning with countywide crash patterns that we're seeing as well.
Yeah, Aaron, do you have a question?
I mean, isn't the slide basically this inquiry of the city engineer? Where they think there's issues? Because, I mean, I'm from Oakley, and my city engineer thinks every category is an issue just about, including aging drivers. And Brentwood, with all the active adult in East County, they don't think that's an issue. So, I mean, I don't give this graph much weight, personally.
Okay, so yeah, I'll let you speak to it, but basically, part of how these were developed was, for example, in terms of the Caltrans State Highway Strategic Safety Plan, and so this is kind of bringing this down to the local level and trying to make it relevant, but it's not just the city engineer, because in terms of the shared responsibility, we're talking about multidisciplinary, stakeholder involvement, and so it does involve, other perspectives, and that diverse stakeholder group is in part who helped develop these checkboxes, and so I'm guessing that's what happened in the particular case of Oakley here.
Yeah, and so I think, again, it's each jurisdiction can decide how many of them that they want to focus on individually, and so some jurisdictions choose fewer to have a core focus area, while others recognize that deaths and serious injuries are occurring across a number of different categories. And yes, to the point of who beyond just the city engineers, also emergency response and bringing them in to help understand how we can better address getting people when they are involved in one of those serious collisions to the hospital quicker to prevent death.
But I think, just to be clear, that your point is a good one, that, if there should be more focus or a narrower focus, that's certainly, comments that we're interested in hearing. And once we do this at the countywide higher level, you start to see the patterns across the local agencies, because at the local level, you wouldn't necessarily see this. But yeah, you'll start to see patterns that some local agencies may have a wider focus in terms of number of topics. And so if we think it would be useful to narrow that, in particular at the countywide perspective, this is an opportunity to do that. Do you want to say anything more on this slide or go to the next one? So one of the abilities that the BayVis tool gives our local agencies is some insight into the economic impacts from fatal and severe injuries. And so the annual economic cost to our communities is estimated at $1.3 billion a year. And we've tried to make this as relatable or tangible as possible in terms of breaking it down by subregion and jurisdiction and per capita, in the hopes that it'll help motivate and build additional community support for why the Safe Systems approach and why a Vision Zero policy is needed at the local level, to kind of change the way that projects are developed and planned and designed in the first place. And included, in terms of this, all the different assumptions that go into these cost estimates. It includes everything from people, spending more time in traffic because of traffic congestion, because of fatal and severe injuries, and the congestion delay due to that. It's the fatal and severe injuries, severe injuries in terms of folks that aren't able to go to work for a certain amount of time, and the lost economic productivity related to that. It's insurance costs. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's all-encompassing in terms of societal cost is the intent of the analysis, to try and capture the change in your quality of life if you're seriously injured. So you have a life-changing injury like a loss of limb. What is the cost of that economically over time? So just like your insurance, the actuarial behind it, but it's trying to at least capture all of those different elements, not just the cost of you going to the hospital in that initial moment and the cost of repairing your vehicle or replacing the vehicle, but trying to, what is the cost overall to society? I just also would emphasize this does not capture the fact that somebody's family there does not have somebody in that anymore in the situation of a loss of life or in a serious injury. And so this is the economic component of it. There's also the human component and societal community side of these are people that are in our community that are no longer, in the case of a death, participating or part of their family or our community.
And the intent behind putting together this information at a countywide level is to empower local agencies with another tool in the toolbox, and empower potentially folks like Bay Area Council or whomever else that might be interested in the business community to see that we all have kind of a role to play in addressing this issue. The next slide is a reminder from what was initially adopted in 2021, which was the previous 10 years of collision analysis, which used a bit of a different methodology, and it was before the BayVis tool was developed. And so this was the county-wide data, and so the common collision patterns included things like the slip lanes, right turn, channelized, that are common for involving cyclists and pedestrians in fatal and severe injuries, seniors, youth, transit priority areas, Caltrans interchanges, trail crossings, which includes, an interested stakeholder of the Park District, whom we work with, of course. And so the hope is that we can use these type of patterns that have been identified and empower our public works professionals and our planners to develop projects based on these at scale across jurisdictional boundaries, ideally. Anything more we should say on this? So yeah, looking forward to comments and questions.
Okay, great, and thank you for all your work. Comments and questions here, Aaron?
Going back to slide 15 with the economic impact of collisions. So are you saying the economic cost is 1.33 billion a year? And the per capita
Countywide,
cost,
yes.
countywide, and the per capita cost countywide is per person is 25,200. Those numbers don't work.
Okay, we can
You're like
revisit it.
you're like massive multiples off. I mean, that would put, I think, at like 28, 29 billion dollars. If you're using 25,000 per capita.
Okay.
It's 1,100 some bucks.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll take a look.
I'm wondering if that also just includes healthcare costs and things like that, rather than like damages to cars, bicycles, other structures, and so forth.
It does include medical care and property damage, yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, Ken?
Was there something I missed? No, so my question is about the data. Where do we get the collision reporting data? I mean, is there more than one source? And are we only looking at fatal and severe injury?
So there are multiple data sources, and remind me to come back to your other question so I don't forget it. So the BayViz tool, I'll let Matt speak to this as well, but the 10 years of analysis that were done 2008 through 2017, that's the SWITRS database, which is CHP's statewide database. And then, but it was using just to throw out additional acronyms, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
TIMS through UC Berkeley SafeTrack. Right, right.
No, I get you. No, I just, background-wise, traffic investigator, accident reconstructionist, that type of thing. And so, I'm very familiar with SWITRS.
Right.
But jurisdictionally, that's impacted. Some agencies do not even take police reports or incident reports or even contacts on non-injury collisions, right?
Right.
So there could be hundreds of collisions out there
That aren't reported.
but you could have, high-impact intersections that are routinely having property damage-only collisions at a high rate that we don't even know about. So that's why I ask, are we looking only at severe injury fatalities to make this plan, or are we looking where we're having perpetual issues and engineering problems and/or sightline problems, all these other things that can impact traffic collisions?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very much an all of the above approach in some ways, because as you're also aware in terms of all the different ongoing efforts within CCTA, there's the ADS grant, the automated driving system, and there's a number of efforts that, several of us are working on that are going to be able to ingest and analyze data in closer to real time, video analytics, close calls, what some call near misses. So there's kind of many different data that we that are looked at, by the agencies locally and countywide. Do you want to add?
I'd say the plan is focused on us addressing fatal and serious injuries first, of achieving Vision Zero. So even if a location had a number of rear ends resulting in property damage, we want to focus on that site where we have people dying or being seriously injured first. So I think that's the part of the principle of the SAFE system is let's eliminate fatal and serious, and
Then we can get to
then move down to that next
more-
level of injury.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm clearly on board with that, and maybe it's anecdotal. It's just, I can't recall, like a location. I can recall the primary collision factor, being consistent through fatalities and severe injury crashes. But what I don't necessarily get is the geography, that it seems to happen in the same location as repetitively as the PCF factor. And that's what kind of throws me off. I mean, I clearly, we want no one to die, we want no one to suffer a severe injury on the roads, but I don't know that we're gonna find the pattern that will be the one you can take a direct action on and impact, you know, I mean, for years, we've tried impaired driving as one of the most contributing factors to a fatal collision, and there are associated factors with that, right? But the traditional enforcement patterns we do don't necessarily always have the outcomes we want. And so that's what I'm looking at, is how we're going to get the outcomes we want. And I support the plan. Don't get me wrong. I want to make sure it's really going to get us where we want to land.
Right. You'll hear in the context of local road safety plans and some of the other programs statewide and nationally, the 5 E's or the 6 E's, or in some cases the 7 E's. I would argue empathy should be one of them, multimodal empathy. But you know, engineering, enforcement, education. But one of the key principles of the Vision Zero policy that the board adopted in 21 is, yes, it's kind of initially focusing on fatal and severe injuries. It's initially focusing on, what else am I?
What I was just going to add is that we don't only look at just where the collisions are occurring right now, so we try to understand, and so I brought up these collision patterns because they kind of get to the idea of understanding what are the roadway characteristics that are associated with fatal and serious injuries. So they may be occurring at multiple different individual locations across the county, but they may share similar characteristics like being skewed intersections or have dual left turn lanes, whatever that characteristic may be. And so a core part of the safe system approach is addressing that underlying risk and not waiting for the fatal to occur. Right. And so what we do at that level is try to take roadway characteristic data, associate it with broadly at a county-wide level where those fatal and serious injuries are occurring, so that we can then develop common patterns to identify sites and target those for improvements. So some sites may have had a fatal and serious injury, unfortunately, already, but that also allows us the opportunity to say, we want to get out here and fix this before somebody dies here, rather than waiting for it.
Yeah, and so historically, the you know, planning and engineering transportation profession has, it's basically moving away from a more reactive approach that's kind of looking at collision data, for example, and high injury network, identified map street segments and those types of things, moving toward a more proactive safe system approach. That's the idea.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry.
Kind of along with that, you know, I've been reading my my city's police log for 10 years now straight, almost every single day. And so I know where a lot of the problem intersections are. So I, just because I was curious, I went on to, what is it, Bayviz, mysidewalk.com, and tried to draw a circle around certain areas, and wanted to go in and see what the results were, but they asked for a password. Do I have to have a password to get in there?
Yes, unfortunately, which is something that we have been coordinating with MTC to encourage access, but I can certainly get you access.
Okay, that would be really interesting, because then I could take it back to my city engineer. We're getting a new city engineer pretty soon, because my past one just retired, and so I'd like to alert this new person to, you know, what's happening. Yeah. The other thing that I just mentioned is, I know, you know, walking is pretty dangerous on some streets, and I've recently bought a Dayglow baseball cap. I have a Dayglow sweatshirt. I have a Dayglow vest that I wear whenever I go out and cross big streets, because it's really a concern. And I would just say that I know in my city, it's usually speeding and driving under the influence that causes a lot of the accidents. Okay, any other questions or comments here? Aaron, got any?
I just run fast.
He runs fast. Yeah, John.
Yes, Chair Kelly, I just want to add to the presentation here, just an important clarification to, again, this is a countywide, so on a little bit higher level. effort, and we are focusing on severe injuries and fatalities. That's really the main focus of this document. Now, I hear from your respective jurisdictions in the county and in the cities, right? Yes, there's a separate effort when you delve into the local, there's other data sets that is available and that the cities needs to look at. So what we did here was the BayVis model, which is really kind of focused on more like, correct me if I'm wrong, called regional, high level, like freeway to,
Right.
and highway data. But we know that there's other data set that's focused on locally. So like when you mentioned like property damages and all that, then that's all in that data set. And keep in mind that there are efforts, continued efforts at the local level, at your city level, at the county level, to do more investigation and more studies to follow up on at that level. But this serves a certain purpose. There's
Okay.
other planning efforts.
Got it, yeah.
And I don't mean to take away from the work that's being done or what we're talking about here. It just, for us at the county level, what I would direct is, yeah, we're gonna look at those high propensity property damage only collision sites simply because they're gonna lead to that one-time fatal or severe injury collision, just based on a sheer volume of activity, not necessarily that it's the high risk.
Okay. So, right before us, then, Jackie, do we have any public comment on this?
No public comment, and I don't see any hands raised. Oh, one hand just raised. Sorry,
Okay.
just 1 second. Looks like Chris Weeks. Just one moment.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I thought I would ask a question today. Hello, Colin, and thank you for presenting to our SWAT board a little while back. I wanted to just touch base and confirm that we indeed had the presentation and recommended it to move on to the planning committee. So thank you for doing that and mentioning that. I just wanted to make a couple requests on behalf of some of our La Miranda members. They were hoping that you would consider or just discuss today briefly just their interest in the possibility of keeping this document as kind of a living document that could be added to address the 8 questions that we sent in after our SWAT board meeting. We sent it into CCTA. And the second part of the question is some of our members were also concerned about how their local jurisdictions reflected in some of the impact analysis, and they're hoping that you guys might consider including at some point as part of this process some more locally focused analysis to supplement what we already have here that was perceived to be more freeway accident oriented than otherwise. So I wanted to say those 2 things on behalf of our group. And thank you for the presentation. Very supportive of this initiative. And on behalf of San Ramon, thank you for leading us forward with the most recent set of grants. We're honored to be part of a partnership with CCTA that received the most recent set of grants. So thank you. And also a humble request to see what we can do to integrate some of the input from our SWAT board and SWAT cities. So thank you for giving me a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Any other public comment, Jackie?
No other public comments received.
Okay, so I'd like to bring it back here to the committee.
I'll move the item, but, yeah, well, I was gonna start with that, because from what I remember Colin saying at the very beginning is, yes, this is living, breathing, gonna change, gonna be updated, going to be talked about a lot.
Yeah, maybe I can just jump in really quick. So, this conversation is definitely ongoing. I mean, as I think Colin already mentioned it, and this is more for Mr. Weeks in terms of the comment, but I think there is a strong commitment by CCTA to continue to update these data sets, and both with local available data as well as other future regional data. And that's one of the reasons I think Director Wong talked about this in terms of the, you know, the local data being merged with the regional data. And I think our vehicle in which we're going to do that is really through this data repository that we're developing. And so I think what we want to, there's a strong commitment there to really keep this data set updated, living data set, mainly, and we've talked about this much internally, and mainly to make sure that there's because really the purpose of this document is that allows local jurisdictions to be able to apply for Safe Streets for All funding, right? That's really let's get back to really the goal outcome, you know, results achieved here is that, you know, we want these local jurisdictions to have enough information and tools to develop their own Safe Streets for All applications. We're happy to continue to do these larger applications like we've been doing with this recent planning grant, and also the big implementation we got last year. So I think there's a lot of successes there that we can continue to work with the local jurisdiction, and Mr. Clark has been really at the table garnering that collaboration with the local jurisdictions on that. So I think all of that information will be continue to be updated, and you have a commitment from CCTA doing that, and we're definitely taking away those questions that were received from SWAT and making sure they're taken into consideration in the future. And you know, Mr. Clark talked about this in terms of the BayViz program. And I don't know if you talked about this, but MTC does have a large grant to actually update that BayViz platform, to continue to keep that platform updated, because this CSAP project was really a pilot program that was tearing off of that BayViz data set. And so the idea was to, you know, use us as a pilot, but then maybe, again, this is a learning opportunity for MTC to understand what data sets are still needed to include or to update as part of this large update to BayViz. And so I think, yeah, all of this is living. We all talked about it internally, and we want to assure that, you know, even though I know there's some cities that are concerned about how their cities are being represented in this data, it does not necessarily preclude them, you know, from going after, you know, future Safe Streets for All funding. You know, this is very much kind of a check the box item, to be able to make the grant more competitive, to be successful when competing for Safe Streets for All funding.
Yeah, that's really great to know. And this document will continue to live. I think, Colin, you said here on the CCTA planning website, right? So it'll be updated on a regular basis. Yeah, okay, wonderful.
And doesn't it, in a sense, give us kind of a measure of successes? You know, so we can make adjustments as we update, as we continue to make the changes and the data sets evolve, then we know jurisdictionally, across all jurisdictions, what adjustments we can make, what planning we can do, what engineering, whatever it might be. It gives us something to measure against and see what's winning and what's losing.
Yeah, I mean, this gets back to what we talked about at the board workshop. You know, this is really CCTA moving into this performance-based planning and guiding investment, right? And this is really what this is all about, is really guiding investment into the most needed locations in Contra Costa County. So as we think about grants and we think about future measures, future investments, you know, this is really what these documents, and so Director Wong and Mr. Clark are talking about, you know, how do we guide these investments using these tools, you know, and that's what the data repository is supposed to be. It's supposed to help us to make those decisions, to be able to make, you know, more cost-effective, more thoughtful, more performance-based decision-making, through as we think about these future investments.
Okay, great. So, are there any more comments?
Move
No.
approval.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Before I second it, I'd like to see that slide 15 numbers fixed, but then I'll second it.
Okay. So it's a motion by Carlson, second by Meadows. Jackie, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
No.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Meadows?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins? And Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Perkins absent.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Colin and Matt, thank you very much, and Tim and John for your comments as well. Okay, so now we're moving on to regular agenda item 4B, which is approval of the City of Richmond's draft PIP, that's Performance Improvements Plan, and the authority's requirements. And the Paratransit Coordinating Council authority will use these documents to detail the conditions of continued Measure J Program 15 funding. And this will now be presented by Ying Smith. Ying?
Thank you, Chair Kelly and Commissioners. Good afternoon. Ying Smith, Director of Mobility Programs. So first, I would like to actually invite LaShonda White from City of Richmond to give us a presentation. LaShonda, will you be able to share your screen and give us a presentation?
Hi, yes. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ms. Smith, and thank you, Chair Kelly and members of the CCTA Planning Committee. My name is LaShonda White, Deputy City Manager with the City of Richmond. I'm very happy to be here. I actually have another consultant, I think, is also in the waiting room, Wayne Tonda, that needs to be promoted to a panelist, if that is possible.
I do not see him in the waiting room.
Okay. We will just continue. Well, I just want to thank CCTA staff. We've had a really close relationship and great working relationship with Rashida, Kamara, and others. And I just really do appreciate the support we received to move this project forward in the way that we have. We're really excited to be with you today to share the updates that we have around Richmond's paratransit program. And I will get started. Let me share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, we do see the slides on the side. Could you put it into sort of, yeah.
Is it working?
No, that didn't work so well.
It didn't work so well. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Swap presenter view. You just had to swap presenter view.
Okay, let me swap presenter view. Is this working better?
Great, yes, thank you.
Thank you for your patience on that one. And if Wayne Tonda does show up in the waiting room, I would love for you to present to promote him.
Yes, will do. Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, so a little background around Richmond's paratransit program. We have been in existence since the mid-1970s and have provided an amazing service to seniors and disabled individuals between the ages of above age of 18 who are Richmond residents and residents of the unincorporated areas. We have initially started with just the traditional van service and that a lot of other jurisdictions have, but we, over the past few years, began to integrate Lyft, so a ride share service into our program. Here's just a few numbers and an overview of our program. So as I stated, Richmond, we call it our transit. We have city vans, and that provides door-to-door service. So we have right now 2 drivers that go door-to-door, help someone from their door of their home into our shuttle, takes them where they need to go, helps them get to their appointment. So really just hands-on support for individuals who want to use paratransit. Once that service provided by city staff, we are projecting in the current fiscal year around 2,100 trips, and that has been funded by Measure J. We also have a contract with a company called Transmetro, and that, because we only have 2 drivers, they're our on-call kind of overflow driver or service. And so if we need them on any given day where we have too many rides, we're able to call them and give them a manifest for the next day of riders. And in the past, that's been funded by a different funding source called ECIA and the Environmental and Community Investment Agreement. But we are planning to have Measure J cover that in the current fiscal year. And then we also have our transit with Lyft. and that is curb to curb. It's the way that Lyft works for everybody. But for us, the client pays $3 and we will subsidize up to $17, and the client has to pay anything over that $20 mark. And we are estimating 23,000 trips with Lyft, and that has been funded by Measure J. And just so when people do apply to be part of our paratransit program, they're applying for the program. They're applying for van service or Lyft. So when we go out and we're advertising about Richmond's paratransit program, we're telling people about the entirety of the program. Individuals then get to select if they need door-to-door van service or if they want to use Lyft. So people, as we have been going out and doing lots of additional outreach, people are self-selecting more into Lyft. Here's our service area. So it's not, and it doesn't include San Pablo and El Cerrito and Pinole, but in terms of the residents that can sign up to be part of Richmond's paratransit program. So it's not just the city of Richmond. It is Richmond, unincorporated North Richmond, the El Sobrante area, East Richmond Heights, Kensington. And so I just wanted to show that map. So as you all are probably aware, the city of Richmond was audited in 2023. And and that was per CCTA's direction. And the audit had 29 findings and recommendations, very thorough audit. And we have really delved into that audit and wanting to make the changes that have been recommended in the audit. There was some focus on our paratransit vans, which we have moved on. There was also focus on our administrative costs or our cost pool, our overhead, and needing that to be reduced. That went to City Council in October, and our City Council approved for a reduction in our cost pool. And per the CCTA audit, and then a letter that came from CCTA, there were a few things that the City of Richmond needed to do to move forward and to get to the place where we are today. One was, of course, we needed to reduce our overhead costs, which we were able to do with the support of our City Council. We had to determine if we wanted to continue to even provide paratransit services as a city, and we did. We also needed to develop and commit to a performance improvement plan. We needed to say in the next year, how are we going to address the 29 audit findings? How are we going to continue to do better, improve our services on behalf of the individuals who need to use paratransit? And so we met all the deadlines. We submitted our performance improvement plan, and CCTA staff reviewed that, and we've had great conversations about what the path forward looks like. And I've mentioned some of this, but in July, we had to submit our letter of intent to continue the program, which we did. In August, we submitted our performance improvement plan, which outlined each task and how we were going to do it and when we're going to do it. I believe that's included in your packet. We presented to the Paratransit Coordinating Committee initially in September, just to give them an update on where we were and how we were doing. We went to City Council as stated in October and gave our City Council a brief update of everything and asked them to reduce our overhead cost pool charges, which will reduce our cost per trip. And we've been having monthly meetings, twice a month, monthly meetings with paratransit staff. So there were some internal changes we needed to make, some internal analysis we needed to do around paratransit service. And so we've been doing that. Our consultant, Wayne Tonda, has been really great. He has been in local government, retired, but has come back to help us and has really been working with our paratransit staff, looking at the information, the rides, doing a lot of analysis. We're creating some SOPs and different policies that were part of the the audit recommendations and are included in our performance improvement plan. So we really are doing a lot to monitor, evaluate, and improve our services. In November of 2024, after we've done all that, CCTA staff created a document entitled Condition of Continued Service Funding. So it's really our review plan where they laid out performance metrics and requirements, and it was going to help facilitate the oversight of our progress and make sure that we were successfully implementing the performance improvement plan. So we were able to quickly get together, look at it, and we agreed to that review plan. And in November, the Paratransit Coordinating Committee was able to get together. They had their subcommittee got together and reviewed our revised Measure J Program 15 claim form, which we were able to incorporate some of the learnings and information and data from our performance improvement plan. And we also were able to include the updated cost pool allocation. So they were able to review that. And on November 18th, we presented to this almost same identical presentation to the Paratransit Coordinating Council, and they approved our performance improvement plan and also recommended approval of our revised fiscal year 24-25 Measure J Program 15 claim form. And just a little bit of data to share with you all. As we stated, we have Lyft as part of our Transit program, which we believe is unique and doesn't exist in a lot of other jurisdictions. But that has been the program that has grown substantially. As we stated, we go out and we share with senior centers and other communities within Richmond, outside of Richmond, about our paratransit program. And we've seen a huge increase in the number of people who have really been interested in Lyft. Lyft allows individuals to access services 24/7. For our traditional paratransit program with the vans, it is during our business hours, Monday through Friday. And so we've just seen a lot of people really enjoy that service. And I will show you some numbers around that. This just highlights here some pickup zones. We also have drop-off zones that correlate with the pickup zones. But you can see in 21-22, we had 8,000 trips for Lyft. That increased to 12,000, almost 13,000 the next fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we did 17,000 trips. And in the current fiscal year, we're estimating about 21,000 trips. So we have seen maybe a decrease in the van service. So before we had Lyft, people had no choice. If you wanted to use paratransit, you used it between 8:30 and 5, and you only used our van service. When we brought on Lyft, we have seen a substantial, steady increase in individuals who are opting in to be able to use Lyft. And we just celebrated our Commission on Aging's 25th senior ball, and we had a few members who came up to me and thanked me for Lyft. They said having that as a service through paratransit has allowed, a woman said now she can go and take adult classes at a community college. Someone else said it's, able to, I know someone who's been able to continue to go to bowling because they can't drive at night. So it really has enriched the lives of a lot of our seniors in the city of Richmond. So we did submit our revised claim. It was complete and accurate. We responded to all the questions that PCC had of us. We believe that our claim and our performance improvement plan is responsive to the audit recommendations. We are really encouraged about the way in which we are moving forward with our program model. And once again, do appreciate the support from WCTAC and CCTA staff. And we believe in 24-25, combining our van service along with the Lyft service, we believe we'll have at least 25,000 trips to support seniors and individuals with disabilities. So we're excited about that. So in conclusion, we are happy to be here and presenting that we are on a path of continuous improvement around our paratransit program. We're taking the recommendations very seriously, and have enjoyed working with CCTA and WCTAC staff, and believe that our claim reflects the efforts and cooperation of all parties. And we do request that the Planning Committee recommends approval to the CCTA full board of our fiscal year 24-25 Measure J program claim form. I thank you for your time. My contact information is here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. White, and I've heard wonderful things about you, both from CCTA and from WCTAC. I serve on WCTAC, and this was a big issue for a long time, and then when Rashida Kamara got in there and contacted you and other people at the city and did the audit, I think it's really, really helped. So comments here, any comments? No? Okay. Just a couple of comments. I'm glad to see the cost pool will be restricted to no more than 20%. And then my last question is, have you hired or will you soon hire an administrator that is dedicated to this? Because I think that was one of the problems in the past. So where does the city stand at the moment on hiring a full-time administrator?
So we have a job classification ready to go. Because we have not received Measure J funds since 21-22, we received half of our application in 21-22. The city of Richmond right now is operating at a deficit. So we have, our general fund has funded paratransit for the past 3.5 years. And so it's hard for us to hire someone without knowing what the outcome of this will be. So I feel like if we are able to receive some funding and see our negative fund balance go in the opposite direction, and we have some funding available to actually provide the services that's not coming from our general fund, we'll be able to move forward with that. But we are waiting for this outcome.
Okay, great, understand. And then just one point of clarification for the Lyft riders, those are people who are probably not in wheelchairs, is that correct?
For the majority, that is correct. And Wayne Tonda, our consultant, I'm glad he was able to come on. He's here. And he can, Wayne, can you answer the question about wheelchairs and Lyft? I know we talked about that the other day. You may have a little better sense of it.
Sure, be happy to, LaShonda, and I apologize with my technical ignorance in accessing the system. Our Lyft ridership is projected to be about 23,000 this coming year. It's a 300% increase from where it was just 3 years ago. A very small percentage do use wheelchairs. The caveat is in order to, for a Lyft driver to take a wheelchair individual, he or she needs to be able to access the vehicle, fold up the wheelchair, etc., which means they need an attendant with them. So that there are individuals who do use Lyft, but it's a relatively small number. Lyft is primarily for the able-bodied.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tonda, appreciate it. So I will bring this back. Jackie, do we have any public comments here?
No public comment and no written public comment, no virtual.
Okay, so bringing it back to the committee then. Do I hear a motion to approve the city's draft PIP?
I move approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Meadows, seconded by Carlson. Jackie, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins? Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Perkins absent.
Great, thank you, and thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Okay, so now we move to regular agenda item 4C, and that will be approval of the fiscal year 24-25 Measure J Program 15 claim from the City of Richmond as recommended by the subcommittee and resolution 23-16-6 to subtract 32,000 of the city's fiscal year 23-24 Measure J program funding to pay for the audit. And Ying, are you in charge of this one?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
me again. This item, as you can see, it is related to the last item you just recommended for approval. It is for the City of Richmond's fiscal year 24-25 Measure J Program 15 claims. As you may remember, at the September Authority Board meeting, you approved the allocation for Program 15 to all the eligible operators. And that was under resolution, let me get the number, 2428G. At the time, the City of Richmond didn't submit the claim. Obviously, we were in the middle of the audit, and there were a lot of things going on. But the city did follow up and submit the claim to us. The Paratransit Coordinating Council formed the subcommittee quickly and reviewed the claim. And both staff and the subcommittee found the claim to be complete and meet all the requirements. Staff brought the claim item to the PCC at the November meeting. The PCC had a pretty good discussion, as well as asked a lot of questions to city staff as well as authority staff. And those questions were addressed, and PCC also recommend the approval of the claim itself, as well as the release of the fund, Program 15 funds to the City of Richmond for FY 24-25. And that, as another related item, staff also proposed revision 1 to Resolution 2316G that was approved last year to allow the subtraction of the $32,000 of the cost for doing the audit as what we just went through. So that is staff recommendation, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Ying, and I know that's kind of complicated. I understand. Any questions here? No? I don't have any questions either. Aaron? No questions. Jackie, do we have any public comment?
No public comment and no virtual hands raised.
Okay, so we'll bring it back here. Do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Carlson, seconded by Meadows. Jackie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins? Chair Kelly?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioner Perkins absent.
Okay, great. So that's the end of our regular agenda items. We have no correspondence. I don't have any comments. Any comments from the commissioners here?
See you in the new year.
Okay, and Tim or John, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to mention the grant, the SS4I grant, kind of ties in with the first item. I know you've probably seen our announcement already from our account, LinkedIn account, or social media. But I just want to point out that SS4A account, CCT had led, and we received $1.6 million, which is a fantastic award, and it's for planning and demonstration. And we'll be working with the cities of Richmond, San Pablo, Martinez, Panos, and Ramona, and Orinda. And that all kind of stems from the effort of the the CCT SAPs, and then also where there's other applications in progress. I think Colin mentioned it with the Bay Trails and so forth. So all that work kind of leads towards us able to pursue these grants. I just want to mention that.
That's great, and that's just really helpful and appreciated by all the jurisdictions. Tim, do you have any comments?
I was going to mention that, so thank you for that. And then I mentioned the APC, so just want to mention to all of you. So we did today transmitted a letter. I'd actually just forwarded it to all the board members. We transmitted a letter that basically summarizes the comments and discussion from the November board meeting on the regional transportation measure. So there will be a meeting on Monday for the MTC Select Committee to talk about what's going to happen in terms of the framework of that. I know that's going to happen all day on Monday, so stay tuned on that. And also just a friendly reminder to RSVP for the holiday reception on December 19th. So if you haven't seen that, please let me know. I'll make sure you get it.
Okay, great. Well, with that, we have no other business. Happy holidays, everybody, and we'll see you next year.